Good afternoon. I'm Jenna Villani, Executive Director of Alumni Relations here at William Paterson University. We're delighted to welcome you today to today's webinar, Voting 101. On behalf of the Office of Alumni Relations and the Alumni Association, it's my pleasure to have you join us today. And I just also want to acknowledge my colleague, Rodney Cawthon, Alumni Associate, who's also on today's webinar. So feel free to give a virtual hello to Rodney. While we're not able to connect in person at this time, we're pleased to provide many ways for you to stay connected to William Paterson and your alumni community in online and virtual formats. So I encourage you to take advantage of the many virtual programs and activities that we're offering, such as the virtual book club, social events, lifelong learning opportunities, career development programs, webinars like this, and more. Just before we get started, I'll share some details on how the webinar will work today. So you probably noticed when you entered, your microphones and videos were automatically turned off. We kindly ask that you please keep your microphone muted and video off throughout the presentation. We do welcome questions. We want this to be interactive and encourage your participation. So feel free to type in your questions in the chat box throughout the webinar, and we'll take some time to answer those throughout and at the end of the presentation. Just to note that today's session is being recorded and it will be available on demand after the session. And the last note is, just depending on your settings, you're probably seeing the PowerPoint slides on your screen and the speakers down the right-hand side. Just know that you can move that black screen around. So if it's in the way of your view, you can certainly move that around. So let's get started. This webinar is designed to help you successfully navigate the upcoming election. We'll cover the mail-in voting process, confirming registration status, ballots, candidates, and making informed voting decisions when casting your vote. So now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Gary Marks. Gary holds BA degrees in history and political science, as well as an MA in public policy and international affairs, all from William Paterson University. Gary earned his master's in library and information science from Rutgers University and is a PhD candidate at Walden University. Gary has worked in the David and Lorraine Cheng Library since first enrolling at the university in 1997. He currently serves as the reference and outreach librarian, forging partnerships around campus and throughout the community to promote the value and resources of the library. Gary also serves as an adjunct faculty member in the Department of Political Science, teaching courses on American government, state government, and law in everyday life. And so now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Jenna. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am Gary Marks, so welcome, and I'm going to try to keep this as entertaining as possible. I know the election season for many can be a very trying time and may get election overload at some point, seeing a lot of advertisements from candidates and whatnot, a lot of mudslinging type things. But what we're going to talk about today is the election process, and 2020 will be an unprecedented election in our history. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like, how you can be informed to make sure that your vote is counted, confirming registration status, which is very important this year, should not be taken for granted. And then we'll get into a little bit of like the sample ballots to look at, so you can see who's on your ballot and what it's going to look like when it comes to you if it hasn't arrived yet. We'll talk a little bit about researching candidates, and then we'll talk a little bit about voter fraud. And throughout the presentation, if you have questions, please type them in the chat and stop me as I go along. This will be interactive. It won't be a PowerPoint the entire time. I like to just start with the PowerPoint, and then I'm going to get right into hands-on showing you how to do some of these things and check some of the stuff on your own. So let me advance our slide here. Okay, so what we're going to include today, so you're just aware, we're going to talk about resources and answers. We're going to provide guides, tutorials, websites, tools, tips, et cetera, lots of information for your personal use. What we will not cover is I will not be telling you who to vote for, and I will not be providing opinions on any specific candidates or public questions. So if you have questions about what I think about so-and-so as a candidate or an elected official, I will respectfully decline. So we provide all these things, but we don't provide candidates' opinions about the ballot. Because we are a public institution, we must remain neutral. We can also provide information about law and legal resources, but we cannot provide legal advice. So if you have a legal question about your ballot, we can show you exactly where to take that question to, but we can't provide advice on answering that specific question because we are not licensed attorneys either. So it's all about information for us. We encourage everybody to be lifelong learners. We've compiled a lot of resources and tools for you, and we encourage you to take advantage of those things. So if you've participated in a previous webinar, you know about the alumni resource guide that we created for our alumni members of the WP community. If you're not aware, we will show it to you. So everything that I'm going to show you today, we've added to that guide. We like to make things simple. So it's a one-stop shop. So you can go to the alumni resources guide. You can find information on doing research on academic materials that are still available to you as an alumni. You'll find the voting resources, and you'll find all of the other webinars that we've done for the Alumni Association available all on that guide. So how can you get to it? Well, if you go to the Alumni Association benefits page, you'll see the David Lorraine Cheng Library. If you click on that, then you will see the new Alumni Resources LibGuide. You can also call us for information, but it's very easy to get through for the Alumni Association page. You can also get it from the library homepage, which is what I'm going to show you how to do today. Quite simply, go to the WPUNJ library, click on research guides, type in alumni, and you will find it there. So if you have any questions before we begin, please type them into the chat. I will stop along the way. But now let me take this down, and voila, we are at the library homepage. It was a quick journey. So this is what our David Lorraine Cheng Library homepage looks like. And you will see we have the research guides here. So I'm going to show you, if you click on that and type in alumni, you will see the WPUNJ Alumni Resources Guide. And this is what it looks like. So you'll see it's got a lot of information about other topics. Some of our previous webinars on internet safety for parents. Encourage you to check those out. But what we're going to talk about today is our voting resources guide. And this tab right here links out to our voting 101 guide. And now this is geared primarily for New Jersey residents, and portions of it are geared towards our student population. But it does apply to alumni as well. So if you're out of state, if you don't live in New Jersey, type it in the chat box. Let me know where you're from. We've been considering adding additional pages and tabs to the guide for those who are alumni who live out of state to help them as best we can. It's just there's 50 states, lots of voting policies and laws and on the books, so it's kind of very difficult to encompass all of them in one location. So we're going to start right on our homepage here. So if you are not aware, New Jersey just this year implemented online voter registration system. So if you have not registered to vote in the past, you used to fill out a paper form, mail it in, and that would be how you registered to vote. Now you can do that online through the New Jersey voter portal. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But it's similar to like the DMV where you need your certain number of documents and points to get a license. It's the same scenario for your online registration. So first thing we're going to do this year is everybody should check their voter registration status. Why I say that is because your ballot is going to get mailed to the address on file. And you want to confirm that that address is actually correct. Because if not, the ballot will go someplace and you will not get it. And you'll be wondering, how can I vote? You can do that simply by going to the NJ Division of Elections and My Register tab, type in your information, and it will pull up your voter registration information. So if I were to type in mine, it'll take a little bit of time, and boom, there's my info. So I can see that I have an effective in-place voter registration. So now, where do I vote this year? So please check your voter registration status. I received a lot of questions so far about and some complaints about the governor and the executive order to send everyone mail-in ballots. Some people disagreed. Some people felt we should be able to vote in person. So let's clear that up now. So everyone in the state who is registered to vote before October 13th, so next Tuesday, I believe it is the actual deadline for registration. If you are registered before 8 p.m. on that date, you will get a ballot in the mail for this year's election. Okay? And I'll show you those ballots in a little while, so some samples to see what they're going to look like. You can complete that ballot and return it in a number of different ways. We'll show you those as well. Or you can actually still go and vote in person. It will be different, however. You won't be able to vote at your traditional polling location. So for me, I used to vote very conveniently at the VFW at the end of my block. I used to come home from work, grab my kids, take them down. We walk down to the voting booth together. They got a kick out of it. Teach them some, civic responsibility, and we'd vote. That polling location is closed this year. There will be a very limited number of polling locations open. So you can choose the where do I vote option, and you'll see what polling location is open to you listed in your voter registration status. So you can go to that polling location on the day of the election and vote. However, you won't be walking into a voting booth and pushing the buttons like you had in the past. You will be able to complete what's called a provisional ballot, which in the past is when anyone would go to vote at the voting booth and there was a discrepancy with their registration status, or if their signature didn't match. When you go into the polling location, you usually tell the person your last name, they find you, they turn the book around, you see your name, you sign next to it. If the signatures match, then the polling location person gives you a little card, you walk over to the booth and vote. So if that signature doesn't match or your information is incorrect in the book or anything like that, they have you fill out a provisional ballot. So that is another paper form ballot, and it goes into the State Division of Elections, and they hold it. They won't count that ballot until all of the mail-in ballots are counted this year. Now, why are they doing that? That's to be sure that I don't mail my ballot today and then go to my polling location on the 3rd and also fill out a provisional ballot. So it will block any duplicate votes automatically. It'll flag it in the system. So anybody who tries to vote multiple times will be caught. And it is a felony to try and commit voter fraud. We'll talk a little bit about that later at the end of the session today. So don't do that. Don't vote by mail and then go and fill out your provisional ballot anyway. So also, if you feel a little bit more comfortable hand delivering your ballot, you can do so on the election day to your poll workers. So you can go into that polling location with your mail-in ballot properly filled out and sealed. We'll show you how to do that, and submit it to your poll worker, and that'll count as your vote. And that will get counted directly with all the rest of the mail-in ballots. It won't have to wait till the provisional ballots, which most likely won't be counted until after November 10th this year. It's an interesting topic as well. So that's is basically how you can vote, where you can vote. So you can vote in person if you want. Now, mail-in ballots, everybody's like up in arms, like, how do I know my ballot's going to be counted? So the number one thing you can do is create what's called a voter record account. Now I already have one, and I'm going to show it really quickly. I'm just going to, let's see if I can close this tab. It's not letting me close. There we are. So I'm going to show you, if you track your mail-in ballot, you can create a voter record account, and it will show your actual voting history. So it will go back, usually I think it goes back 10 years, and it will show you all the elections that you have participated in. It won't show who you voted for. That information is private. That information is not kept in the system. So when you go and create your voter record, you can see like, oh, I voted last year, I voted the year before, I missed an election one year, something like that, or I moved, so I voted in one location one year location in another. But you can track your mail-in ballot. So this is kind of like tracking your UPS. You can go there, create a voter record account, and it will show you when your mail-in ballot was created, when it was mailed to you, um, and then when the U.S. Postal Service delivered it to you. And then when you fill it out and complete it and send it back, they'll mark it off when it's actually been received back at the County Board of Elections for tabulation. And they start counting them as they are received. So they don't have to wait till the election day to start counting the mail-in ballots. So that's how, when November 3rd comes around and you start seeing all the results posted of who's leading the election, that's because all these mail-in ballots can be counted as soon as they are received. Other states have different policies about when they can start counting ballots. Some states don't count ballots until the election day starts, so they're just holding them until then. Each state is different, so I highly recommend, if you have questions about your state, let me know. We can look them up for you. I could show you where to get that information, but that's just the way it is in New Jersey. So if we were to my voter record sign in, I have created an account here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to log in because it will show you my voting history, and that's a little bit private to me, so I will keep that. But you can sign up for your voter record just by going there, and you'll be able to see your regular election history and your vote by mail history, and the status of your ballot and everything else will all be right there for you to make sure that your vote is counted. So create that account, mail in your ballot, and then you can go there and make sure it's been received and tabulated. So it's a very easy process. Now, how else can you submit your ballot other than just putting it in the mailbox and handing it to your poll worker on the election day? You can drive to or go to the County Board of Elections, if anybody knows where that is, and hand it in to the office of the County Board of Elections. Or what might be easier to do is nearly every municipal government in the state has a secure mail-in ballot drop box location. I know mine is directly in front of the municipal building in my town. It's a big red, white, and blue bin. It looks like a postal box that you would drop mail into, but that is a secured mail-in ballot location only. No mail or anything else. It's open 24 hours a day that you can drop your stuff in there. It's emptied periodically, and it doesn't involve the Postal Service at all. It's only the Board of Elections that has access to those things. So if we want to take a look, if you click on the link here if you wanted to do that option, it's got the locations of all the ballot drop boxes in your county. So I am in Passaic County right now. I will choose that, and I can see exactly where these are located and what date they become active. Most of them activated before they send out the mail-in ballots. So I live in Wanacue. So as I said, it's right at the front entrance of the municipal building. It's big red, white, and blue. You can't miss it. You'll see almost every town has one at the front of their municipal building. What we don't want to recommend is, let's say you live in Passaic County. So I live in Wanacue. And let's say hypothetically, I worked in Morris County, is you don't want to take your ballot and drop it in the Morris County drop box. You want to make sure that it goes in a Passaic County drop box, preferably the one in your municipality, especially if there's local elections going on, just to avoid having your ballots going all over the place, to make sure that you do that. Oh, was there a question? Nope, I heard some background noise. No problem. If you have questions, please type them into the chat and we'll slow down for you. Okay, so that is the secure mail-in ballot drop box option. We have a couple other resources here, the Know Your Voting Rights and the New Jersey Division of Elections. So the Know Your Voting Rights is more applicable toward regular elections, I'd say in a normal year, to know if you're denied the right to vote at a polling location, what your rights are. And you should never be denied to vote at a polling location. If there's ever a discrepancy, you should be allowed to fill out a provisional ballot. And then the New Jersey Division of Elections will look at that provisional ballot and determine if your eligibility is accurate. If you are allowed to vote, your vote will count. If you are not allowed to vote, it will not count. So they will do that determination later rather than prohibiting you from voting or entering a ballot at any time. So that's one good thing to know in the state of New Jersey. Okay, so what to expect? So let's get over here and take a look at some of the ballots. There's going to be a couple of things you're going to receive with your ballot. It's going to be a lot, and it's going to have a lot of language on it, and might even be written in multiple language. It's going to have a lot of instructions. Don't do this, et cetera, et cetera. For anybody who's received their ballot, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to look at my sample ballot. Which all of these are available on our voting guide. So if you want to see what your ballot's going to look like, who the candidates are, what you're going to be voting on, simply go to the guide here, choose the county you live in, and then it will break down and it will provide the municipality you live in. Because that way it goes down to see what your municipal elections are, your city council, mayor, things like that. Again, so I live in Wanacue, so I will take a look at my Wanacue ballot. Okay, so this is just the ballot. Okay, there's going to be multiple pieces you're going to get in the mail. The ballot is the main key item. Okay, and it's a lot like a Scantron. If anyone remembers taking the SATs or anything like that in the past, it's got the little circles you got to fill in. Okay, so key thing about this, make sure you fill in the circle completely. Again, just like in high school, and make sure you only use black, blue, or pencil. Black or blue ink or pencil. Do not use red. And they rate these in nice little small font on the ballot. So don't miss those type of things. Pay attention to them very closely because your ballot will be invalidated if you use the wrong color ink, believe that or not. It also will look different than in the past. And depending on what town you lived in the past, your ballot would look different. But you used to have kind of like vote row A, vote row B, or something like that, or vote column A, vote column B, and they'd have all the parties together on the same line. Now everything is broken down by the specific office. So you'll see the presidents, candidates for the electors for president are listed here, and they're listed in their own little box. Okay, and then if you go down, you'll see the Senate election that's going on in New Jersey here and their own little box. The House of Representatives for my district 11 is here, candidates in their own box. Freeholders, and then you go back up to the right-hand side, my local council, and then I have 2 school boards in my town. There are more school boards in the state of New Jersey than almost any other state in the country. So the high school has its own school board, and then the elementary school has its own school board. So I will vote for each one of those categories as well. Now, it will say vote both front and back of ballot. That is correct. So if you only fill in the stuff on the front of the ballot and miss the stuff on the back, your vote will still count as long as you do all the other parts correctly, but you'll miss out on some of the other items. And these are the public questions which will be on the ballot. I'll come back to those in a little while. We'll talk about them. It's the same type of thing with your answer. If you support it or don't support it, you hit yes or no. And that's basically the ballot in itself, right? It's somewhat a little different and complicated, but it'll get the job done as long as you read it carefully. The biggest thing to note is when you receive this ballot, it's going to come in 3 pieces. It typically should come in 3 pieces. There will be the ballot is going to be on the inside of an envelope. There will be an empty certification envelope also with your ballot. And then there will be your outer envelope, which will also have the return address information on it. So when you receive your ballot, do not throw any pieces away. Some people will tear the tabs off and like, oh, I only need the stuff inside and throw away the outside. No, do not throw any of the pieces away. Keep them all. Because there will also be a certificate of their ballot that you're going to have to complete. And I believe Bergen County is our neighbor right next door. They have an excellent example of what this looks like. Perfect. So the outer envelope will look like this. So it's basically going to have your information on it for the mailing, and then it will have the return envelope information for where it's going to be sent to. And no postage necessary. You don't have to put a stamp on it. This is already taken care of. It doesn't cost you any money to vote. Okay. So that you will keep. You don't want to throw that outer envelope. Okay. And then this is the return of the envelope. And this is if you're giving anyone permission to turn your ballot in for you. Personal decisions, it's up to you. Personally, I'll be handling my own ballot delivery. This is the key portion right here. For most mail-in ballots, now mail-in voting has been going on for decades in the US. It's not something new. We just never done it on this scale before. So it'll be new for us to handle this type of thing. But within your, within your ballot, there's going to be your ballot, and then there's going to be the certificate of voter. Okay. Now this is going to be in the form of another envelope. So once you complete your ballot, you're going to put it inside this certificate, and you're going to complete the certificate here and sign this. If you fail to do this, your vote will not count. Okay? This is the #1 thing that we've seen in the past for mail-in ballots being invalidated and not accepted, is the failure to sign their certificate when they complete their ballot. #2 is it says sealed. A lot of people will place the ballot inside their certificate envelope and then place that inside the outer envelope for the mailing, but they won't seal this certificate. And that will also lead to your ballot being rejected. So it must be sealed and signed to be an accepted ballot. Those are the 2 top things that we will see this year and in previous years where a ballot will not be accepted by the powers that be. Okay, and then most county election boards have all have these wonderful instructions, vote by mail instructions. They look like a jumbled mess because most of them are written. There's multiple areas, things here. Some of them are not very clear. So that's why we're trying to do this, to trying to walk through the process. So you see their ballot here looks different than what mine looks like in Wanacue. So that's also a very challenging thing, is ballots are not uniform across every district. So if you move from one area to another, your ballot's going to look different from one year to the next. All right, and then here's the instructions. And as I say, you may vote on election day using a provisional paper ballot at your polling location. So let's take that and we'll close that. We will close this. Okay, I'm just trying to close up some of these tabs for us. All right, so that is what your sample ballots are going to look like. I'm happy to pull up any now if anybody would like to take a look at them. And we've shown you how to complete those. Basically you're going to fill them out. You're going to make sure that it's sealed properly. You're going to sign that certificate. You're going to put that in the outer envelope and then drop it off at your secure mail-in drop box, County Board of Elections, post office, or take it to your polling location on the day of the election. Up to you how you handle that. And then how to track your ballot to make sure that it's accepted. And whether you mail it or take it, hand deliver it, you could still track your ballot to make sure that it's counted. So you can always go into your voting portal and confirm that your mail-in ballot was counted and not rejected. So after you submit it, if you see that it's pending or rejected, you can actually contact the Board of Elections and say, why was my ballot rejected? And possibly request a replacement so you can correct your issue. So that is a huge tip that I recommend to everybody, to, after you submit your ballot, to go on and confirm that it was actually accepted. If you wait to the last minute, you might be behind the deadline on it. And if you try to submit after November 3rd, it will not count. So the sooner you complete your ballot and submit it and confirm that it's accepted, the more comfortable you can be that your vote is actually counted. Okay, so I'll pause here for any questions about ballots or how to submit your ballots or envelopes or anything else like that before we move on to our next section.
Don't see any questions coming through. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them into the chat, and Gary will answer them for you. But I think we can move on for now. Okay. All
right, so we will move on. So now we're going to talk a little bit about being an informed voter. And this is one of the things I talk to my students about most of the time in classes, that it's not just enough to just go to the polls and push buttons and vote. That is great, but it actually helps to know what you're doing when you go there or when you fill out your ballot, and know who the candidates are that you're voting for. Now, unfortunately, because we have so many elections and so many levels of government, this isn't always an easy task. So we've tried to make it a little bit easier to learn about the candidates on your ballot. So there's 2 tools here that I'll point out and then I'll show you a different resource. So the two tools are the Voter Information Project, and this we've customized for the Cheng Library Civic Literacy Initiative. So you can actually complete this, enter your address, and it will pull up your specific ballot and what's going to be on it. Okay, this is for New Jersey residents only. If you live outside the state of New Jersey, the best we could do at this point is to include a widget from Vote 411, which this allows you to check your specific state and municipality and local government and find your specific ballot and what's going to be on your ballot in your specific state. Now, like I said, I can't provide every county and every state's ballots, but this is a perfect widget to get you started for anything if you live outside the state of New Jersey. So either one of those are excellent tools to get you started to see your ballot and start doing your research on, who to vote for and what to vote for. So right now, one of the main things I'm going to show you is Project Vote Smart. Now, this is a fabulous resource for elections on the federal level, because federal candidates have to provide a lot more information, and there's a lot more prominence in those races than the local elections. Unfortunately, doing research on local elections is not easy. It takes work. It takes a little bit of effort on everyone's part. You may have candidates on your ballot that do not have websites. They do not have any really public information available. And the only information you might get is from like a Facebook page of that individual candidate. But the idea is that in most of these instances in small towns, you might know the name of the person on the candidate already. So what we're going to look at here is Project Vote Smart, and this will give you information on most of your federal candidates. So we have a U.S. Senate election in New Jersey coming up. Senator Cory Booker is running for U.S. Senate. He is the incumbent. He won the special election years ago. So we can do a search, and now we have a number of categories. So we can find out exactly where this candidate stands on several key positions. So whatever issues are important to us, whether it be abortion, whether it be gun rights, economy, education, we could see where this candidate stands on each of those issues, or if they haven't given a position. You'll see this little red box up here. He failed to provide voters on key issues. So this entity provides a questionnaire to each elected official or each candidate, which they complete to help inform voters like you of where they stand on certain things. It's got a little key here, so they've made an official stance. Inferred basically means they didn't address it, but based on how they voted on certain issues or speeches they've made. And unknown, basically, we don't know anything about where the person stands on this. So that is one way you can find out. The second is there's a rating scale provided by a number of political action organizations. So this is where a number of organizations will rate a candidate or a elected official on their specific voting record of issues. So as you can see here on abortion, there are pro-choice organizations who rank this candidate as 100% pro-choice, and then the right to life organizations who have the opposite rating scale. So wherever your political or personal opinion is on any of these issues, you can go and you can confirm that the candidate that you want to represent you aligns with your interests. And these are go across the board of anything you could possibly think of that's covered at the financial level, at the federal level, sorry, financial. At the federal level, one that's important to me is higher education. So I can click on a higher education and see the voting record of this candidate on higher education related issues. Okay. You can also go and check out the bio of the individual to see what information they provided, where they went to school, what their political experience has been, etc. So all of these wonderful things have been compiled in one nice little easy location. And this is their voting record, or public records, actually, public statements. If you're going to read through all these, feel free, but it's all there in case you wanted to. Funding is another key one. There's a great resource I'll show you in a second to find out who's funding your political candidates. Money in politics is huge. So we can actually see here where Senator Booker is financing his political campaigns from. And we could see some of the top contributors to the senator's campaigns and what sectors are providing the most money to support their campaign. And you can see these are quite substantial numbers. There's another great resource I'll show you called Open Secrets, where you can really get into the details of who's supporting your political candidates. Okay, so that's Project Vote Smarts, fantastic tool for researching on federal candidates. Vote 411 also has a lot of local information for you, and it may or may not link out to your state specific candidates. So candidates that might be for your state legislature, state assembly. Some of them yes, some of them no. I can't guarantee you whether that information is going to be there or not. It just kind of depends on what information has been provided by the candidates. Okay. And OpenSecrets.org is a watchdog. It's a nonprofit organization that tracks money in politics. So you can actually go here and you'll find a lot of research and information related to candidates and where they're getting their money from. So you can click on the congressional elections. You can select the state. So if we were to choose New Jersey, we can see which districts and races in New Jersey have raised the most money. And typically ones where they consider they are toss-ups, like 7 or 11, you will see the most money. That's where there's a decent amount of Republican and Democratic registered voters. So that's where both parties will funnel a lot of money to try and win those seats. District 11, where I live, was held by Congressman Rodney Frelinghuysen for decades until he retired, and he was a Republican, and then it was won by Democrat Mickey Sherrill, who was running for re-election. So that is considered a very up for grabs seat that you could swing Democrat or Republican. So you could see there's a ton of money spent on that race, as is the 7th and 5th district and 3rd district in New Jersey, where you'll see a lot more money pumped into those races. Okay, so you can also go into by candidate name. So if I wanted to see specific candidates in my area, I could see exactly where that candidate has raised money from, who supports that candidate, etc. And it's very, very enlightening information. It's also frightening at some point. So, but that information is out there and available to you. Okay. And the last one is we have a couple others: Political Money Line, and then Find Your Representatives. Find Your Representatives. This will show your state reps. So if you enter your zip code and then your personal address, I don't mind if you guys see that. So it will allow you to see all of your elected officials that represent you. So these are my federal officials. These are all my state officials. So my state assemblymen, state senators, the attorney general, lieutenant governor, and it will allow me to check them. So if I wanted to email them some of my opinions, I could very easily do so just by going to the site, clicking the box, and it will send whatever message I want to my elected representatives. So if I am angered by the mail-in ballot process, I can certainly let my representatives know. If I'm angered about property taxes, I can let my representatives know. But it makes a nice, easy tool to contact your representatives. If you're unsure about where they stand on positions, you can email them and say, what's your position on this, and see what kind of response you get. Most will respond very quickly. They have staffers that handle a lot of those questions for them. So that is a lot of our information on tracking or finding information about candidates to make informed decisions. I mentioned before that there are some public questions on the ballot this year. There are 3 in New Jersey, so I want to go over those real quick. So we provide this information that takes you right to what the public questions are. There are 3. One is the constitutional amendment to legalize marijuana. One is a property tax deduction for peacetime veterans. And the other is a COVID adjustment to the census redistricting. So real quick, let me just dive into what those are for a minute. So this is basically asking the citizens of the state if they approve amending the Constitution to legalize a controlled form of marijuana called cannabis. So as you can see, this is what's going to be on your ballot, and it'll be a simple yes or no. So yes, I approve of this, or no, I do not want this constitutional amendment to be passed. So once this passes or is not passed, that's when the legislature will actually take action on it. It doesn't become, if it does pass, it doesn't become legal at the next day. It basically gives the legislature the authority to create laws for the legalization process. It doesn't automatically say, all right, we voted on it, it's good, it's legal. That's not the case. Okay. It basically, this is just the legislature's safeguard. They were going to try and pass a law on their own and decided, no, we're going to punt this and let the voters tell us what to do. So that's what this ballot question is specifically about. And it has been one of the more controversial in New Jersey over the past few years. There's, if anybody remembers, many decades ago, actually not even decades ago, years ago, the Building Our Future Bond Act was for higher education, which allowed the state to borrow $700 million to support higher ed. Our institution benefited greatly from that, and there's a number of several new buildings as a result. So the second is another kind of simple one. Well, I wouldn't say another simple, but it is simpler to understand. So this basically allows, it extends property tax rebates and deductions to veterans who served in the military but may not have served in a time of war. So it just kind of thinks it's, I don't want to go into too much detail about where I stand on this position, but it's not a huge change in policy. It basically just extends something that already exists to veterans of foreign wars to veterans who served regardless of whether they were actually in war or combat or not, or during a time, during what we consider peacetime. And the last is, as a result of COVID, the Census 2020 has been going on and has been delayed, let's put it that way, or inhibited by the pandemic. So by law, every time there's a census, there must be a redistricting. And this is where you get your new congressional districts, allocations, new voting maps are drawn, and there's a timeline for completing those. So if the census data is delayed, that means that redistricting plan has to be delayed as well. But by law, it can't be. So this is allowing amending the Constitution to change the timeline for that temporarily. So because if we don't get all the data from the census, we can't redraw the districts. So it's one of those ones where if you say, if you vote yes, you're just saying like, all right, we understand that COVID has inhibited the census, so we need to make some adjustments. If you say no, you're basically saying, all right, figure it out and make it happen anyway. That's the short version of what this interpretive statement says on all this information. So, so those are the public questions. And last thing I was touched upon was voter fraud, but I didn't just pause real quick to see if there's any questions from anybody. I didn't see anything come through the chat.
I had one come directly to me, which I can read. So someone is asking, it's related to the ballot. So on my official election ballot envelope, I filled out the "to protect your vote" box, but I shouldn't have. Can I still mail my ballot, or do I have to request a new one?
Oof. So there's a so I just want to make sure I'm understanding which portion of your ballot you completed. So I'm going to pull up the Bergen County sample again. And there are some things that, so if you're talking about this section here to protect your ballot for if you're sending it with somebody else, I'm not quite 100% sure. But if there's any errors that you've messed up on your ballot, the easiest thing to do is to go to your Board of Elections and request a new one. Typically, you can hand in your old one and say, I messed up, I need a new one. They will take the old one, they will change it in the system, delete that voter number, that voter ballot, and print and give you a new one. That is the easiest way to accomplish that. And the information for contacting whoever your clerk is in your area, you can get from the voter guide here. Click on whatever county you live in, and the contact information will be there. So if you live in Bergen County, you'll see you can email the clerk, you can call the clerk, find out what their hours are, say, this is what my situation is, and they could say, come on in and we'll give you a new ballot. That's the easiest answer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That's all we have for now.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, so I want to just finally talk a little bit about voter fraud. And if anybody lives in New Jersey or near Paterson, New Jersey specifically, you've heard this a lot over the last few months. There was a city council election in Paterson, New Jersey, where there were instances of alleged voter fraud. And this isn't necessarily voter fraud committed by voters, as there are two candidates who are technically being charged with voter manipulation by the Attorney General. So what had happened was they had kind of arranged or took advantage of the system to submit a number of mail-in ballots and group them together and kind of submit them, whether they were legal ballots or not. I'm not going to pass judgment on that. But basically what had happened was there were issues that were raised, there were flags that were flown. The issue went to the courts, and the courts said, no, this election cannot stand. It doesn't hold up to the integrity of democratic elections, and you need to have a new election. And subsequently, so there's going to be a new election, and the Attorney General is also filing charges against individuals who were responsible for those actions. So this is a good example of it's reassuring and concerning at the same time. It's reassuring that instances of voter fraud are caught. So it's not easy to manipulate an election on a large scale through voter fraud, because even just a few ballots throw up red flags. A couple hundred throw up huge red flags and are easily caught. But it is concerning that the attempt was made. So if you talk to scholars and you look at the research, voter fraud in the history of the US has been so minuscule, it cannot make really a dent in any federal size election. We're talking like 0.001% is the average voter fraud rate in the US of actual cases reported and found to be legitimate. Mail-in ballots, however, this is the first time we're ever doing anything on this scale. So there is a word of caution, and you'll probably see a lot of news stories of, ballots found here, or ballots thrown away, or ballots disregarded. And I can't properly explain those type of things. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with each one of those. But each one is usually investigated, and whether there's issues of fraud or not is determined by election officials and by law enforcement officials. So it's definitely a topic of debate. But in order to influence a federal election, in other words, so in order to have a voter fraud attempt to manipulate the federal election, would have to be on such a large scale that hundreds of thousands of ballots would have to be somehow manipulated in certain areas in order to accomplish any task of that nature. Local elections are actually more susceptible to voter fraud than federal elections are, because local elections balances can be tipped by a few dozen votes. Depending on how many people live in your area, some of those elections are decided by like 10, 15 votes. So voter fraud in those areas with just a few ballots here and there are easier to manipulate. So at the local level, voter fraud is something to be more aware of, and depending on who your elected officials are and candidates are. But at the federal level, it is really not something that can be accomplished that easily. That's my tidbit on voter fraud. And so that's where I'm going to end today's discussion on election 2020. And I'll take any final questions we may have.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was really informative. Again, any final questions, feel free to type them into the chat box now. Give it a minute.
And I'm going to put the links to the voting guide in the chat so you can have them if you'd like. My contact information is on here, so you can easily email me, call me. I answer voting questions all the time. I was just telling Jenna before the event here, I recently helped a student who is fully remote who lives in Iceland try and resolve their voter registration and voting issues. So we have heard a lot, and we do our best to provide the best information and resources to make it all possible.
Well, we really appreciate that. And I don't see any questions coming through. So I think that'll wrap up our session. Thank you to you all for attending. I hope you found it useful. And Gary, once again, thank you for your time this afternoon and for sharing all this great information with us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Glad everybody came. Wish everybody the best and good luck voting this year.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.